As a trauma survivor, I have always been interested in resilience. But growing up, I believed it was something that you were born with. Then in graduate school, I learned that it was a quality that we all possess and a set of skills we can all strengthen. Most of my resilience has come from writing and seeing myself in new ways by confronting the stories I've always told myself. The more I did that, the stronger I became, and I've dedicated my life to helping others do this work. This podcast is for anyone who wants to understand their story and how to revise it, because when we do that work, we change the world. Welcome to the second episode of my season of Summer Shorts, a series of shorter, sweeter episodes where you'll hear from writers working in the trenches right alongside you. Each week, they'll share their fears, doubts, and questions they have about the craft of writing and the writing life. Consider it your backstage pass to my coaching practice. This week, you'll hear from another Camp Structure alumni, Melissa Macomber, a writer who's currently working on a memoir about how to recognize your soulmates. During this episode, we take a deep dive into working with beta readers, including practical issues like where to find them and what to send them, as well as the fears we face when asking for feedback on our work. Before we get to our conversation, I have a few questions for you. Have you finished a draft of your manuscript? Are you wondering if it's ready for beta readers? What do you want to know about this process? What fears come up when you imagine yourself handing over your work? I hope you'll ponder these questions as you listen along. Now let's get to my conversation with Melissa Macomber. Hey writers, have you written a draft or two of a memoir only to feel completely lost? Do you wonder what the story really is or how to structure it? Or have you received competing advice from some people who love certain parts of your story while others don't? Or worst of all, have you been ghosted by agents and editors or received the cryptic, great writing, but just not for us email? Most writers think the answer is diving deeply into their pages. But to figure out what's missing, what needs to be retooled, and what needs to be tossed, you need a bird's eye view of your manuscript. That's what I'll provide in Camp Structure, my proven program that will help you understand how stories work, decide what parts of your life actually belong in your book, and develop a clear path through the revision landmines most memoirists face. As a member of Camp Structure, you'll benefit from expert coaching, membership in a motivated cohort, monthly Ask Me Anything office hours, and instruction that will help you finish this book and the next one. So if you want to feel confident about the story you're telling, clarity around how to write it, and the focus needed to get the job done, sign up for Camp Structure by clicking on the link in the show notes. Camp begins on Tuesday, September 10th, which will be here before you know it, so be sure to grab your spot. Well, hello, Melissa. I am so glad to have you on the Writing and Resilience podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. Happy to be here.
Well, you and I worked together for, I think, almost a year, right?
Yes, just
So
about.
I was so excited when you pitched me because I was like, yes, we get to work together again. And so having you on the podcast is an absolute delight. You have an excellent question that you're going to share with everyone. But before we get to that question, what would you like people to know about you and your project?
Okay, well, I am in the middle of writing my first memoir. I've just finished draft 4, and I am looking forward to learning more about beta readers because I feel like I'm ready for that next step, but I'm still a little nervous about it, honestly.
First, round of applause because you've made it to draft 4, and that is huge.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Before we get into talking about beta readers, what has helped you have the stamina to get to
Mm,
the 4th draft? Because some people are probably like, OMG, there are 4 or more
mm,
drafts. Yes, there
mm,
are, my friends, if you are just starting out, but you can do it.
mm,
Tell us how.
mm. Okay, so with the first draft, I took a long time. It was probably 4 years. I started in 2016. I didn't finish draft 1 until 2020. And as frustrating as it was, I really needed that time,
Yeah.
not only to actually physically put pen to paper, so to speak, but also to emotionally work through what I was writing and if I had the right
Mm-hmm.
to write it in the first place. So that really helped. And then community is the other bit. I had 2 writing partners throughout the first draft process. And then after I finished draft two, I looked to you, Lisa, and camp structure really helped not only the class itself, but the other people in the class, and the community that we built there really helped to be the wind in my sails that I needed to get through draft four.
I love that answer. And yes, community is a huge part of it. And I always tell people, in fact, I was talking with a client last night about first drafts, and this person was in the middle of this draft. And I was like, he had been working for 6 months and was a little apologetic about how long it had taken to get to where he was in his draft. And I was like, it takes 1 to 2 years sometimes for people to get through that first draft for all of the reasons that you shared. It takes a while. It's not something that just happens easily for most people. And so
Mm-hmm.
community is a huge part of that. Beta
Mm-hmm.
readers are a part of that
Mm-hmm.
community. And I love how honest you were. It's scary. It's so
Yes.
vulnerable to share your work. It is a very vulnerable act. So you want to make sure that you're at the right place
Mm-hmm.
and also that you're choosing the right people. So I don't know if there's anything more you want to add to that question. No is a great answer, but if you have anything else about how do I know that I'm ready for beta readers, what would you add?
Yes, that's exactly what I would add, is that I recognize that, well, I believe that my book is ready for beta readers, but also part of my desire to have beta readers is to see how I feel when I get that kind of feedback, and if I'm ready for it, because moving forward there's only going to be more feedback and more opinions, and I want to make sure that I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so beta readers can be a great way to test the waters in what it's
Mm-hmm.
like to share your work with the world. And that is so important because once you publish your manuscript, it belongs to everyone else. And of course, everyone's going to have an opinion on it. That's just how life works. So, testing
Mm-hmm.
the waters, seeing what it feels like, getting the right feedback is really helpful. So, I'm going to dive right in and talk about the three kinds of beta readers every writer needs. And you will definitely need the first two, some people will need the third. And then I'm going to talk about that readiness issue. So, how
Okay.
can you do some readiness tests to see if your work is ready? So, there are really three types of beta readers. And before I get into them, I'm going to say a few words. Listen to the word reader. Okay. That's really important because a beta reader is not an editor. So you can't expect the same level of editorial feedback that you will from, say, someone like me who works as a professional editor, but that's okay. So you want to make sure that your expectations are correct and know that these people are going to help you. They are an integral part of the process. Everyone has beta readers. I have beta readers. Every writer I know has beta readers. And the goal is to choose wisely. So, one of the first types of beta readers, which is probably the type of beta reader you want right now, is a writer who serves as beta reader. Okay, so writers are usually people in your writing community. It can be helpful if they don't know your whole story or they haven't read your whole manuscript. That's important because you want people with fresh eyes. But these are people who understand the language of writing. So they
Mm-hmm.
can give you the kinds of feedback that will help you take your manuscript to the next level. Because I often tell people you want to have at least some beta readers before you work with a professional editor. That's the most cost effective way to do this work. And it
Mm-hmm.
also ensures that you have taken your manuscript as far as you possibly can before you either work with someone like me or you start querying. So it's really important to get these beta readers that are writers. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're thinking about these people, if it's the first time that you've ever done it, you're feeling vulnerable, choose people you already know. It's perfectly fine to do that. And when you are, setting these up, you want to think about the 3 to 5 questions you want them to answer, right? They're not going to be able to give you a ton of super detailed feedback, nor should they, right? They're doing editing light. They're giving you big picture feedback to help you take something to the next level. So here are some of the types of questions you might want to ask. Do you understand what my narrative arc is? Is that arc of transformation clear to you? How about my characters? Do they feel developed in a fair and balanced way? What about the pacing? Are there times when you get bored or it feels like I'm rushing? Is there anywhere that you feel confused? So, what are those points of confusion? But also ask, what am I doing really well? So, I was talking with Andrea Firth a couple of weeks ago about this, and pointing out the highlights are also it's also important. So you don't just want to get a bunch of critical constructive feedback. You also want people to point out what they really love so that you can do more of that in a future draft. So these are the kinds of questions you want to ask the writer type of beta reader. And, again, choosing people that talking with them about what this experience is like, setting deadlines. That's also very important. Could you read this within X number of weeks or X number of months? Usually a fair amount of time is 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes people say 3 months. And that gives you a chance to be away from the manuscript long enough to also have fresh eyes. So even though for a lot of writers, it's like, oh my God, you mean I have to wait for that long? Yes, that will help you be able to do this well. So get some time. Also, think about how you're going to compensate that person. Taking on your manuscript is a labor of love. People are putting in a good amount of their own time and their own expertise. So, one of the easiest and most cost effective ways, and I'll say the most effective ways to do this, is to be a beta reader yourself. So, choose someone who is at the same place you are and serve as a beta reader. You are going to learn so much about your own manuscript by serving as someone else's beta reader. Sometimes you're going to see things like, OMG, they do this so well. I want to do this too. Other times you'll be like, oh yeah, now I see why that doesn't work. Right. And that's okay. We all have those things in our manuscripts, no judging anyone, but that is one of the ways that we learn as a writer. So in terms of the number that you need, I always say 3. And here's the reason why. If you have one person, you're just getting one opinion. If you have 2, you can run into the worst possible feedback situation possible, where one person loves something and the other person hates it. 3 gives you consensus. More than that, especially early on, and it can feel like you have too many cooks in the kitchen and you've got, all kinds of opinions going all over the place. So that's why I say 3. So before I get into the other 2 types of beta readers, what is this making you think about?
It's making me think about the difference between giving someone the entire manuscript versus a part of it. And is there any value to just doing a few chapters first, or do you typically recommend the entire manuscript at one time?
Thank you for asking that question, because that is so important for people to think about. If you know someone well and you have worked with them before, I think it's perfectly fine to give them your entire manuscript, but it's also okay to start with a section. If you don't know someone, maybe consider the first 25 pages to really make sure that the type of feedback they give you aligns with what you're looking for and what you need. So it's okay to say, I want to start with 10 pages or 25 pages. Let's see how it goes. We might not feel like we're each other's readers, and that's okay. So, yeah, start with a small amount, see how it goes, be willing to say no if it doesn't work. There are plenty of people that I love that I do not want to be my beta readers. And speaking of people we love, your beta readers should never be your friends or people in your family. They can be part of your writing community. Okay, so because you're probably going to have friends in your writing community, you're like, but what about this person who I love and I cherish all of their feedback? Can't I ask them? Yes, but not your partner, not your family, not your friends out in the world, because they love you. And more often than not, they're going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yes, I've had that experience, unfortunately. I've made that mistake already, so I won't do that again.
Yes, so many writers do. And I think the hardest part is when you give it to someone who really loves you and they're giving you all of this glowing praise, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a bestseller. I can't believe it on the first draft. Are you kidding me? And then you get into a writing group or you take a class and you get the smackdown of, this is not clear.
Yep.
You are not writing in scene, my friend. What is all of this? Cut it out. And it can be such a wake up call.
Yeah. Absolutely. You just described my experience very well.
Yes, happens to all of us. All right, so we've talked about writers as beta readers. And for most of us, that's the first level. Then there is another level, and those are actual readers. These are people who would read your manuscript. And so the first group, you're looking for people who are going to put on the red lights or the yellow lights. They're going to tell you where it's not done yet, or oh, this might need to go, or it's not working. You know, again, they're not editors. They're not going to give you that detailed of feedback, but you're looking for red lights. When you get to the reader phase, you believe your manuscript is done. You have done all of your due diligence, gone through all of the editorial drafts. You have worked with multiple rounds of writer types of beta readers. You have maybe worked with an editor. You know this manuscript is done. Now you're looking for a green light. When you're looking for a green light, you're going to ask a different set of questions. Right? When you ask these problem focused questions that I suggested for the writer types of beta readers, you're looking for problems. You do not need a whole bunch of readers to give you a bunch of problems that take you through 10 more drafts and 10 more years of your book. You need to know, will you buy it or not? And this is how you present it. Here is my finished book. I'm just testing to see how people respond. Here's the feedback I need from you. Would you buy it or not? Yes or no, and why? That's it. You're looking for a green light. You're not looking for problems. So asking the reader level of beta reader these questions is really helpful. At that point, you can have 10 to 15. And especially, the closer you get to publication, I think the more beta readers you want. And these beta readers are really the people who are your audience. So that's why it's so important to know who your audience is and what your audience is interested in so that you make sure you're handing this to someone who has the highest potential of loving your book. Like, as an example, if you know someone who's like, yeah, I'll be your beta reader, and my favorite type of writing is fantasy fiction. Yeah, give me your memoir. Terrible beta reader.
Right.
Yeah, so be thinking about what that is, and you look like there's a question behind that.
So it sounds like you're saying that you might do a couple of rounds of the first set of beta readers before you get to the second set. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to depend on the kinds of feedback you get. If you get a lot of problem saturated feedback from your first round of beta readers and you do a whole bunch of edits, you want to make sure that you do another round to see if you've truly addressed those issues.
Okay. Okay. Which might, I'm just thinking for me, that might mean reaching outside of my current writing community and finding, I don't know, I know people are volunteer to be beta readers online and that kind of thing. I don't know if that's part of your experience or anything you comment on, but that's just something I'm thinking for the future.
Yeah, where do you find these people? I think Facebook groups, Reddit groups, so there are different online groups that you might be a part of, especially if they're writing related groups. Also, Bianca Maurice, who is one of the hosts of the Shit No One Tells You About Writing podcast, does the Great Beta Reader Matchup. The people who do this and sign up are serious writers in your genre. And if they're listeners of the podcast, you know they are working on their stuff. So you might find someone who's a good match by signing up. And this is something that she does regularly. So you could consider signing up for that and just see, is this a good fit? And I believe what you submit is 3,000 words. So it's a small portion. So you are introducing yourself to these people and there are low stakes. If you don't like the feedback you get, you don't jive with people, thank you so much for your feedback. Moving on.
Okay. No, that's helpful. That's exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. Thanks.
So that's 1 and 2. Everybody needs those. 3 are sensitivity readers. If you are writing about a marginalized group that you are not a part of, whether that's one of your characters in your book or you're writing about them in some other kind of way, you need to have sensitivity readers who are people within that group who are going to read your work and comment on the level of sensitivity you've given and whether or not anything will be seen as offensive. So if you have a writer who serves as a beta reader or a reader, there are lots of I'll say free ways that you can compensate people, for instance, reading someone's manuscript, or, oh, with readers, I'm going to give you a free copy of the book once it's published. So there's different ways that you can do that. However, when it comes to sensitivity readers, they should always be financially compensated for their work. I will put a link in the show notes to an article from Writer's Digest to help you learn more about sensitivity readers and also how to find them. Writing Diversely is the name of an organization that offers sensitivity readers. These are professionals who are, used to doing this work. But I will say, if you know you need a sensitivity reader, you should also do your due diligence and really be thinking about how you are portraying people and doing it in the most sensitive way possible by learning as much as you can about that. Listening to the Shit No One Tells You About Writing podcast is a great way to do that. They talk a lot about sensitivity issues, and do not rely on this person who's reading your manuscript to do that emotional labor for you.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. So I don't think that part is going to be as relevant to your manuscript just because of what I've already read, since I've had the privilege of reading some of your work. However, I wanted to make sure that I shared that because some people who are listening are not going to, they're going to need these kinds of readers. All right. So that is the answer to how do you know if your manuscript is ready for beta readers. In about 30 seconds, what do you think now that I've shared this?
Super helpful because it's very step by step. I feel like I've read a lot of information about beta readers that could put me on a lot of different paths, but this feels much more concrete and much more doable, frankly. It feels like it's something I could actually accomplish, which makes me feel good.
Yay! That is always my hope. I want you to leave with your question answered and to feel like there are actionable steps you can take. So once this is done, and I'll say for anyone who's listening, or if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to listen and then write down the steps that you want to take so that you have created an actionable list for yourself. I'm going to wrap up by sharing the 3 questions I ask all my guests. And this is more of a lightning round kind of thing. So what is the best piece of writing advice you have ever received?
Oh, it is take care of your heart, which I got from you through camp structure, and the whole idea that it is as important to take care of your heart and your emotions in your writing process as it is your manuscript.
Yes, and I got that from an Instagram post. It was by Kaisi Lemon, who is the author of Heavy. Excellent book. And yes, I share that because it is so important. And we tend to neglect it in thinking about how we can create this product as quickly as possible so we can get it out into the world. And memoir does not work that way. What's one way that you take care of your heart?
My most recent favorite way is by making a mistake allowance regularly. It's an idea I got from Adam Grant's book called Hidden Potential. And it's the idea that in order to really grow, you need to be uncomfortable a lot. And being uncomfortable for me means making a lot of mistakes. So if I have a mistake allowance, then I feel like I'm meeting my goal and I'm actually working toward progress, doing something that doesn't maybe feel like progress because it feels like a mistake. It's been really helpful.
I love that. And I'll make sure that the title of that book is in the show notes in case anyone else wants to take a look at it. So, final question. You're an author, building an author platform. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
On my website. I have a website, melissamacomber.com. Plenty of ways to reach me there. I maintain a blog as well. So I would love to hear from you.
Wonderful. And so her website will also be in the show notes so that you can connect. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for being on the podcast. It has been an absolute delight to reconnect, and I am excited to see what happens when you get these beta readers and you are ready for the next level of manuscript review.
Me too. And thank you so much, Lisa. It was such a pleasure to be here.
Are you a writer who struggles with doubts? Do you wonder if your stories are good enough? Do you wish you had some simple tricks that would make the writing life just a little bit easier? Become part of my Writing and Resilience community by signing up for my newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive a free copy of Write More, Fret Less, 5 brain hacks that will supercharge your productivity, creativity, and confidence. The link is in the show notes. That's it for today's episode. Before you leave, I would love your help spreading the word about this podcast. You can do this in a few very simple ways. Click on the subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner, then leave a 5-star review. You can also let me know what you think or share ideas for the podcast by connecting with me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or through my Writing and Resilience newsletter, which you can have delivered directly to your inbox.